Argent here. So just an update on my usage of Lamictal. I think I had a couple people post saying that they were going to try it or they found it interesting, etc. So I've been on it for I think 4 months now. Prior to that, I was on just on my Cymbalta. I'm still taking my Cymbalta. Cymbalta remains the best antidepressant I've ever taken. Probably because it's an SNRI, which affects norepinephrine as well as serotonin. Norepinephrine controls energy levels and focus to a certain extent. Actually, coffee, from what I understand, or caffeine is an N. Like there's SN, which is serotonin, and norepinephrine. Coffee increases your norepinephrine levels, which is why it's a stimulant. It stimulates you, it makes you focus better, and it improves mental capacity. So Cymbalta does that, but it also has the serotonin, which promotes feelings of well-being, confidence, and reduces anxiety and depression. So the two used together tend to be pretty good because serotonin can make you eat more, and kind of the increased energy levels and the complete increased focus levels from the norepinephrine kind of counteracts a lot of the weight gain. It also counteracts kind of the soloments and sluggishness that can accompany purely serotonergic drugs. As always, though, it depends upon the person. Some people lose a lot of weight while on Prozac or Zoloft. So the thing is, I'm bipolar. Now, if you're bipolar, you should not be taking antidepressant monotherapy. Because what it does is, while it can make you feel better, it can also destabilize your mental condition and send you into rapid cycling. Rapid cycling is where you will alternate between depression and mania on a very rapid base, maybe a couple days, maybe a week, maybe within the same day. It just destabilizes someone with the already unstabilized bipolar. I'm not sure exactly why it happens. I think it's just a bit like throwing some more chemicals into a already chaotic situation. So what's generally recommended is, depending on your type of bipolar, either mood stabilizer monotherapy, two mood stabilizers, maybe two that kind of do different things. Because like valproic acid or Depakote is only for mania, and Lamictal is primarily for depression. So you can maybe have two, like you can take lithium because lithium's good for suicidality, and maybe Depakote for more mania control. Lithium, I believe, works on both mania and depression. Or if you're like me and you're bipolar 2, you probably need an antidepressant and a mood stabilizer, and the two work very well together. How does a mood stabilizer work? Well, it depends on the mood stabilizer. So I'm just going to talk about Lamictal and hopefully that'll explain it. So Lamictal, to my understanding, is the newest of the mood stabilizers. As with all the mood stabilizers, they were initially developed to be anticonvulsants. That is, you take them, particularly with kids, and it prevents seizures. It also has a certain effect on migraines and stuff like that. I'm not sure what else. Let's just see here. What else does it cover? Epilepsy, seizures, all kinds of stuff like that. So you can actually get a lot of bipolar drugs as cherry chewables. Um, it's also the same effect is interesting, which kind of suggests some of these conditions might be related. Mood stabilizers also often work on borderline personality disorder, depersonalization, certain hallucinogen disorders, schizoaffective disorder, post-traumatic disorder. Um, some of them are okay for unipolar depression. I know lithium works on unipolar depression, but its side effects are rather bad. So Lamictal is the latest one, and it has a very different chemical profile from the other ones. Why it's of a lot of interest is it does two things which are very beneficial. The first being that it works more on depression than mania. Now, I'm not sure how all the others work. I know Depakote is primarily mania. I think Tegretol is a mixture. Um, and lithium is both, but more mania. Most of them tend to work more on mania than depression. And if you're someone like me, the manic periods aren't that big a deal, and they don't tend to manifest as typical mania if you're in bipolar 2. It tends to manifest as kind of panicky, anxious, aggressive, um, kind of compulsive periods, but you don't have like psychotic delusions like you have when you're full mania. Like in full mania, you might think you're Jesus or something. That's just kind of what happens when you're in a full manic episode. So you don't really need that strong an anti-manic drug. I think Lamictal is mildly anti-manic, and that's enough for me. It also has a lot of just positive antidepressant properties. Antidepressant properties that affect different neurochemicals in different parts of the brain than standard antidepressants. So it kind of works with it because it affects other parts of the brain, so it works well in conjunction with another antidepressant. The problem is if you double up certain types of them, you can get an overload. There's something called serotonin syndrome, which is very unpleasant if you're taking like two different types of serotonergic drugs or too high a dose of one. So Lamictal is the most recent development. So it's good because it works on just depression in general, but within the context of bipolar, it's more effective at preventing depressive episodes and reducing the severity of depressive episodes than similar drugs. It's from what I've seen the most effective at preventing depressive episodes. Mania, well, people can do bad things during mania. It's often not as much of a concern because a lot of people enjoy mania. A lot of people actually are more productive, particularly if you're like mildly manic. You can go and like when I've had manic periods, I've written like I wrote No Chance if you've read that. I guess you could always message me if you want to see that. But I wrote that book in like 3 months during an extended manic phase. I just switched medication. I was manic as fuck, and I could just sit there and write like 20 pages a day, and the ideas just flowed from me. I sometimes record videos, and my better videos are often during manic phases. Your brain just works hyper fast, and people who are manic a lot of the time often are very successful. There's a lot of very creative people with bipolar. I think it's fairly closely related to IQ. There's some disorders that are more common in people with high IQ, like OCD, mania, or I think schizoid. A lot of kind of anxiety disorders and things like bipolar are more common in high IQ people, which is probably makes sense. It's probably like it could be something left over from a previous age. Like with cats seem paranoid, and they just jump. That's where the expression "scaredy cat" comes from, and that's because they kind of come from an environment where like birds and shit can eat them, and they have to be really alert. But in kind of a modern context, it's not very useful. So it makes them seem crazy, and they're kind of nervous wrecks a lot of the time. But in previous eras, that was evolved to be a useful and desirable feature. So anyway, so Lamictal. What does it feel like? So when you start taking Lamictal, it has to be titrated up very slowly. If you start off on a high dose of Lamictal, there's a high chance you'll develop a fatal skin rash. Now, the skin rash is fatal, but only if it's left untreated and only if you keep taking it. From my understanding, if you start taking it and you see a skin rash, you stop taking it, you go to the hospital, they give you a round of antibiotics. 9 times out of 10, you're fine. The sooner you stop it, the better. People keep taking it, and I think one or two people have died. It's like 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000. If you have Asian, and I think by the extension Native American ancestry, though, you're 100 times more likely to have a negative reaction to it. I think there's a genetic test that can be done. So you have to start off on 25, and you have to titrate up very slowly. I think you double it each couple weeks until you reach a full dose. If you miss taking the drug 3 days in a row, or for a week in a row, I think it is, you're going to have to start titrating up all over again. It's just something your body really slowly adjusts to. Now, despite that, though, Lamictal is very much a desirable drug because it has very few side effects. It does not cause weight gain. I mean, some drugs cause things in some people. I mean, there's always side effects in different types of people. Um, like some people react to Prozac by gaining weight, which is not really um, so. But in general, Lamictal does not cause weight loss or weight gain. Really, I think it might cause a slight weight loss, but in general, it's weight neutral, which is very nice because Depakote makes you gain weight like crazy. Lithium does cause it, but from my understanding, that's largely because it's salt, and it just makes you retain more water. From what I've read, though, when you stop taking lithium, if you drink just water because you're so thirsty from taking the salt, your body will just retain the water and you'll pee it out when you stop taking it. However, if you drink like sugary drinks to quench your thirst, then it's really bad. So far, the only side effects I found is it can be somewhat disruptive on sleep because it's slightly stimulating. It's not a super stimulating drug, but it's a mildly stimulating drug because it's an antidepressant kind of drug. So some people experience slight sleep disruption. However, the lack of its repression of mania and depression may very well stabilize your sleep. Some people experience an improvement in sleep from it. Um, so it does not cause weight gain. It may even cause slight weight loss. It also does not cause cognitive impairment, which is very important because a lot of drugs can make you drowsy. A lot of them can make you drowsy. A lot of them can lower your IQ. A lot of them can have very negative effects. And I mean, if you're like suicidal or fucking crazy, then yeah, you got to take the drug even if it's hard on you. But like I know for me, antipsychotics just make me a complete zombie. I can't take them. There are people who can take Seroquel and they swear by it and they say it's great, but for me it makes me so tired I can't focus on anything, and I basically just kind of crash. Like I know whenever I take even the lowest dose of Seroquel, I basically will fall into coma sleep. It's a really fucking strong drug. Lamictal has no negative effects. I mean, there's always people who have some negative effects, but by and large, it really doesn't do much. So it doesn't cause weight gain. It doesn't cause um, negative cognitive effects. In fact, with people, particularly with ADHD, it's shown to improve concentration. Um, in certain parts of it, it may actually slightly improve mental performance, which is good. I mean, ideally, you just probably want it to be neutral. Um, the Cymbalta I take, and I remember back when I was on Wellbutrin dramatically improved my mental performance, but it also made me suicidal and really just depressed. Um, but each person kind of has a different reaction. So it doesn't do that, so that's both very positive. It mainly works on depression, which is very positive. It's pretty cheap actually. Lamictal used to be like $300 or $400 a month, but the generics maybe I think I pay $15 a month for the generic. So that's pretty good. I mean, $15 a month isn't really that much. I know people say, "Well, $15 a month sounds like a lot." Well, if you consider that like one meal out could easily run you up to $15, even at not an expensive restaurant, and that's $15 Canadian for you American viewers. So that's like $10 a month. Actually, generics are often cheaper in America, so I think you can get it for like a couple bucks a month. Maybe your insurance plan will cover it. I don't know, but that's good. My Cymbalta, I have drug insurance now, but when I didn't have drug insurance, that was like $160 a month by comparison, because it's not generic. So it's a pretty cheap drug. Also, if you need it to function and not kill yourself, like if you can't work because you're too fucking depressed or manic, and you need to take the medication, $15 a month isn't that bad. I mean, if you work at a semi like above minimum wage job, you can make that in an hour or an hour and a bit. So good price. So what do I find it does for me personally? I think an interesting side effect I find, or not really a side effect. I'll get to that in one sec though. Negatives. I think it does cause dry mouth. Both the drugs I take cause dry mouth. Cymbalta causes it. Lamictal causes it. Uh, but I don't really drink sugary drinks. I just drink a lot of tea and a lot of water. And that's probably fairly healthy, anyways. I mean, drinking like extra water doesn't exactly hurt you. It might mean you have to go to the bathroom a bit more often, but that's not like the worst thing in the world. I mean, if you have to pick between that and insomnia or that and like diabetes, or that and like a diarrhea or a number of other unpleasant side effects. Having to drink more water isn't that bad. Just if you get a drug that makes you thirsty, just make sure you're drinking tea with no sugar in it, like herbal tea is good for that. Or just drink some water. It's cheap, free, and it flushes your body out. It's perfectly healthy. You might retain a bit of water. You might put on a little bit of water weight, but water weight's not really fat. I mean, you'll eventually get rid of it, especially if you ever go off the drug. So it does that. It also gives you headaches. I find that gives you headaches, and my Cymbalta gives me headaches. Now, are they really that bad? No. They are well managed. Some people don't get headaches, but between that, my Cymbalta and coffee, I normally have a headache. So I just, in general, take one Tylenol with my pills in the morning. Like I have my multivitamin, I have my B vitamin, I have my Lamictal, my Cymbalta, and I just put one Tylenol in there, and that tends to work. And that's not that bad. I mean, the headaches aren't terrible. They're pretty easy to manage. You just take an over-the-counter painkiller. You don't even have to take that much. You just have to maybe take one a day, and it kills your headache. You don't. It hasn't caused diarrhea or skin rashes or any kind of weird weight gain stuff. So I mean that's pretty reasonable. So how does it affect me? I find firstly it dramatically reduces my anxiety, particularly social anxiety. It makes it a lot easier for me to relax. It's weird because it is kind of makes you feel tranquil and balanced, but it's not in a sedating way, which is weird because I've taken tranquilizers before. Actually, my doctor gave me some Imovane. Imovane is kind of a tranquilizer. It's mainly for sleep. I take it maybe like once a week. Like if you really gotta sleep, like maybe you have an interview where you have to get up early for work or something. I mean, it's not ideal to be taking tranquilizers, but it's probably better to get some sleep and take one than to get no sleep and not take one. Just as long as you don't take it every day. Um, but what was I going to say? Yeah, it dramatically reduces anxiety. It makes you feel more calm. It doesn't really make you feel lazy though, or solemn or kind of dopey, all of which are very positive compared to some other drugs I've taken. I think what it really does though is it does actually really stabilize your mood. It does what it says on the package. So to me, I used to go from maybe 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10 on the mood scale, 1 being low, 10 being high, on a weekly basis, or a couple, or once or twice a month. I think my cycles were generally 3 weeks up, 3 weeks down, um, with maybe somewhat longer depressive periods. It was probably about 75% depressed, 25% up. So since I started taking it, I find I now go from maybe 3 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. So the range of my moods are much tighter. My depressive phases are much, much less intense. And because I don't get to that really low spiral into the depths of depression, I don't really have suicidal or self harm thoughts nearly as much anymore. Because what really kills people with bipolar is when they crash from mania to depression, and they're in a mixed state. That is, they're both manic and depressed at the same time. So they're kind of hyper, they're super confident, they're very agitated and full of energy, but they also have extremely low self esteem and feel suicidal. And a lot of the time, people don't kill themselves when they're depressed just because they're too lazy to do it. And I don't mean that as like a joke, I mean literally they just can't be bothered. They have too low self esteem to even do that. So the combination of grandiosity and a lack of self preservation from mania and depression is really why people with bipolar kill themselves so often. So it largely gets rid of manic states, mixed states. It does reduce mania by a fair amount, and it does reduce depression by a lot. I find if I'm having a period of depression, and I still get them, I can feel it, particularly after I take it, pulling my brain back to like a 5 out of 10 baseline. Like it lasts much longer and it's much milder. So it might be a couple days of feeling somewhat down versus like 4 weeks of feeling like killing yourself. So I'm on 200, which is 100 dose twice a day, which is about the standard dose. People go up to 400. I like my 200. I think it's working pretty well. But no, that's kind of like what Lamictal does. It reduces that. I find overall my mood's a lot more balanced, and I think people would be like, "Well, you're pill popping. You should be out doing other stuff." Well, that's true, and I do go to therapy twice a week. I'm in a couple groups, but you really need functional medication before you can really get benefit out of therapy. Because if you feel like fucking killing yourself and you can't get up because your body has no energy, you're gonna have trouble getting to therapy, and you'll be like, "Well, I'm learning all these useful skills, but I feel like blowing my brains out." So I don't really have the energy or the will to apply them. And I don't mean that as like the person doesn't want to. They might really want to, but if you have really bad depression, that shit's really difficult, if not impossible. So you take this and then you go to therapy. And you do the two at the same time. And I think what people have to understand is the techniques that a normal person can use to control their mood swings or to control their depression don't necessarily work on people who have abnormally severe moods. I think that has to be really kept in mind. If you have like a super severe mood swing, normal methods aren't going to work on it. So if you take a mood stabilizer, maybe an antidepressant, you get your mood back to more of a normal range. You can start doing the things normal people do, like mindfulness exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, taking breaks, just not thinking about things for a while. Um, you kind of need something to quiet your mind down a bit. And then you can really get benefit out of therapy. Like I find my therapy I've had since starting my Lamictal has been much more productive than like the decade or so of therapy I had before starting it. Sorry, the therapy I've had after starting Lamictal. So that's just something to keep in mind. Um, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. I find it's often handy to hear from someone who's been through the experience, who talks about it candidly. This is Argent signing out.